On Thanksgiving Eve, a powerful woman wanders the empty streets of Chicago after receiving news that shatters her world. Moments later she collapses in the snow, only to be found by a nurse and her young daughter. What begins as a simple act of kindness soon leads to something neither of them could have imagined. Before we dive deeper into this story, let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. The city glowed like a jewel box beneath the November sky. Michigan Avenue stretched before Victoria Langford, every storefront window dressed in autumn gold and copper, every restaurant humming with laughter and the warm scent of roasting turkey. Chicago was alive tonight. The night before Thanksgiving, pulsing with that particular energy that comes when a city prepares to feast. Victoria walked alone. Her driver had offered to wait, of course. Marcus had been with her for 12 years and knew better than to ask questions. When she'd stepped out of Dr. Chen's office on the 14th floor of Northwestern Memorial, her face had told him everything he needed to know. Still, he'd opened the car door ready to take her home to that sprawling Lincoln Park mansion with its empty rooms and silent hallways. "I'll walk," she'd said simply. "Ma'am, it's 23 degrees. I'll walk, Marcus. Go home to your family." Now 3 blocks into her journey she understood why she'd needed this. The cold bit through her cashmere coat, sharp and honest. The wind off Lake Michigan carried snow, not the heavy wet kind, but those delicate flakes that seemed to hang suspended in the air, glowing under the streetlights like tiny stars. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. The words echoed with each footstep. Dr. Chen had been gentle, professional, compassionate in that carefully practiced way that doctors learn. "We can treat it, Victoria. Chemotherapy, possibly surgery if we can shrink the tumor. But I want you to understand the statistics." She'd stopped him there. Victoria Langford had built a pharmaceutical empire on statistics. She knew what stage 3 meant. She knew the survival rates, the quality of life projections, the brutal mathematics of hope. 12%. That's what the 5-year survival rate came down to. 12% chance she'd see another 5 Thanksgivings. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent 30 years developing drugs, negotiating with the FDA, pushing medications through trials. She knew every loophole, every experimental treatment, every cutting-edge therapy, and none of it would save her. The beast growing inside her was too advanced, too aggressive, too hungry. "Do you have family you'd like me to call?" Dr. Chen had asked, his hand already reaching for the phone. Victoria had smiled. That cool, controlled smile that had closed 1,000 boardroom deals. "There's no one." It was true. Her parents had died years ago, worn down by poverty and disappointment, long before their bodies gave out. Her father had worked in a steel mill until his lungs gave out. Her mother had cleaned houses until her back broke. They died within 6 months of each other, bitter and exhausted, never having enjoyed a single day of the wealth Victoria had accumulated. Friends? She had colleagues. Business associates, people who wanted things from her, people who showed up to the charity galas she hosted, who laughed at her jokes because she signed their paychecks, who called her Victoria dear while calculating how to use her connections. But friends? People who would sit beside a hospital bed, hold her hand, tell her stupid jokes to make her forget the poison dripping into her veins. No one. And Ethan? She pushed the thought away, but it came back, persistent as the snow. Ethan. Her son. 28 years old now. She hadn't spoken to him in nearly 10 years, not since that terrible night when he'd stood in her office, not her home, because even family meetings happened in the workplace, and told her he was dropping out of medical school. "I don't want your life, Mom," he'd said, his voice shaking with fury and hurt. "I don't want to spend 60 hours a week building an empire. I don't want patients who are just case numbers. I don't want to become you." She'd said things then that she regretted, cold things, cutting things. She'd called him ungrateful, weak, a disappointment. She'd told him that she'd sacrificed everything to give him opportunities, and he was throwing them away for some naive fantasy about making a difference and connecting with people. "You want to make a difference," she'd said, her voice like ice. "Make money. Power makes a difference. Everything else is just sentiment." He'd looked at her then with something that might have been pity, which was somehow worse than anger. "I feel sorry for you, Mom. I really do." Then he'd left, and she'd let him go, told herself she was better off without the distraction, without the weakness his presence represented. Now, walking through the glittering city, past windows full of families gathering, past restaurants where people clinked glasses and shouted toasts, Victoria felt the full weight of that choice. She'd won everything: power, wealth, respect. She'd appeared on Forbes lists and financial shows. She had a corner office overlooking Lake Michigan and a portfolio worth hundreds of millions. And she'd lost the only thing that mattered. A family passed her, bundled in matching red scarves, the children shrieking with laughter as they threw snowballs at their father. The mother caught Victoria's eye and smiled, that easy smile of the contented, and Victoria found herself smiling back, though it felt strange on her face, like a muscle she'd forgotten how to use. When was the last time she'd smiled genuinely? When was the last time she'd laughed, really laughed, the kind that comes from joy rather than strategy? The snow fell harder now. The streets grew quieter as she moved south, away from the glittering heart of downtown, into neighborhoods where the brownstones huddled together against the cold and the Christmas lights were already strung across porches. Here, the city felt smaller, more intimate. Through windows, she could see dining tables being set, could smell the rich aroma of gravy and pumpkin pie. This is what she'd missed, she realized. Not the big moments, graduations, weddings, births. She'd missed those too, of course. But more than that, she'd missed this, the ordinary magic of ordinary evenings, the casual intimacy of families preparing for holidays together, the unconscious ease of people who knew they were loved. Her head felt light. She'd skipped lunch, skipped most meals lately, actually, her body already rebelling against the thing growing inside it. The sidewalk seemed to tilt beneath her feet. She reached out, her gloved hand finding a lamppost, holding tight while the world spun. Just a little dizzy, she told herself. Keep walking, almost home. But home was still 20 blocks away, and the spinning was getting worse. The lights of the city blurred into long golden streamers. The voices from the restaurants faded into a soft hum, like bees in summer. Her vision narrowed, the world compressing into a tunnel, and at the end of that tunnel was nothing but darkness. Victoria Langford, CEO of Langford Pharmaceuticals, woman who'd never missed a board meeting, who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, who'd built an empire from nothing but determination and fear. Victoria Langford's legs gave out. She felt herself falling, the snow rushing up to meet her, and she thought, quite clearly, this is a terrible place to die. Alone on some random street corner, while everyone else is inside being happy. Then the cold sidewalk caught her, and the world went dark. Monica Harris was tired. Not the regular end-of-shift tired that every nurse knows, but that deep, bone-wearing exhaustion that comes from pulling a double during holiday week, when half the staff called in sick and the ER was jammed with people who'd started their Thanksgiving cooking too early and ended up with burns, cuts, and food poisoning. Her feet hurt. Her back hurt. Her smile muscles hurt from keeping that patient professional expression on her face for 14 straight hours while dealing with everything from a kid who'd shoved a bean up his nose to an elderly man having his third heart attack this year. But Lila was holding her hand, chattering about the Thanksgiving play at school, and that made everything bearable. That was the deal she'd made with herself when Lila's father had walked out 6 years ago. Work hard, sacrifice everything, but always, always come home to her daughter with a smile. Mrs. Patterson says, I have a really good pilgrim voice, Lila was saying, swinging their joined hands. She says I project. What does project mean, Mama? It means you speak up loud and clear, baby. Oh, then yes, I project. Very good. Very well, Mrs. Patterson also says I need to work on my posture because pilgrims stand up straight, and I keep slouching because Mama, look. Monica looked where her daughter was pointing. At first she saw just a dark shape on the sidewalk ahead, maybe a pile of trash or dropped packages. Then she saw the snow settling on dark hair, saw the expensive coat, wool, maybe cashmere, the kind that cost more than Monica's monthly salary, saw the hand stretched out as if reaching for something. Stay here, Monica said, already moving forward, her nurse training kicking in automatically. The woman was maybe 50, though her face had that ageless quality that comes from expensive skincare, and probably some subtle work. Even unconscious, there was something regal about her, something that spoke of power and control. Her makeup was perfect, her hair professionally styled, her manicure recent. This was a woman who was used to being in charge, used to things going according to plan. Fainting on a street corner was definitely not part of the plan. Monica knelt beside her, ignoring the snow soaking through her scrubs. She pressed 2 fingers against the woman's neck, found a pulse, thready and weak, but there. Breathing was shallow but steady. No visible injuries, no blood, no sign of trauma. Medical emergency, probably. Heart attack, stroke, seizure, could be any of them. Monica should call 911, wait for the ambulance, let the professionals handle it. But it was Thanksgiving Eve, the ambulances were backed up, the hospitals overflowing. By the time help arrived, this woman could be hypothermic. And something about her, about the way she lay so still in the snow, reminded Monica of her own mother in those final days, alone, cold, waiting for help that came too late. Is she dead? Lila whispered, standing right beside her despite being told to stay back. No baby, but she's not good. Help me get her up. It should have been harder. The woman was tall, maybe 5'8" or 5'9", and Monica was barely 5'3". But adrenaline is a wonderful thing, and Lila, small as she was, had her grandmother's stubborn strength. Somehow they managed to get the unconscious woman's arm over Monica's shoulder, to half drag, half carry her, the 2 blocks to their apartment building. Mrs. Chen from 2B opened her door as they struggled past, her eyes widening. Monica, what? Call 911 if she doesn't wake up in 10 minutes, Monica gasped, just need to get her warm first. Hypothermia's the immediate danger. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor, and by the time they reached it, Monica's arms were shaking, and her back was screaming. They laid the woman on the couch, the old sagging couch that Monica had gotten from a garage sale 5 years ago, the one with the broken spring in the left cushion, and the stain from when Lila had spilled grape juice that no amount of scrubbing would remove. It was covered now with the quilts her grandmother had made, the ones that were more patches than original fabric, but still held warmth and love. Lila, get me a damp cloth. Not too cold, lukewarm, and bring the thermometer from the bathroom. The one we use when you have a fever. While her daughter ran to help, Monica did a quick assessment. No visible injuries, breathing steady now that she was somewhere warm, no medical alert bracelet. Pupils equal and reactive when she checked with her phone's flashlight. Good signs, all of them. She checked the woman's coat pockets and found a phone, locked of course, and a wallet. The driver's license inside showed a woman named Victoria Langford, with an address in Lincoln Park that made Monica's eyebrows rise. She knew that neighborhood, had driven through it once, gawking at the mansions like a tourist. That's the rich neighborhood, Lila said, peering over her shoulder. Everyone's neighborhood is someone's neighborhood, Monica said automatically, though her daughter wasn't wrong. This woman had serious money, the kind of money that came with drivers and housekeepers and probably a private doctor on speed dial. So what was she doing walking alone on a street corner in Southside? And why did she look so lost? The woman, Victoria, stirred, her eyelids fluttering. Monica knelt beside the couch, kept her voice gentle. Easy now, you're safe. You fainted on the street. My name is Monica, I'm a nurse, you're in my apartment. Victoria's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then sharpening as she took in her surroundings. Monica watched her process it all, the shabby apartment with its peeling paint, the worn furniture that had seen better decades, the little girl staring at her with frank curiosity, the woman in nurse's scrubs, kneeling beside her with concerned eyes. This was not Victoria Langford's world. Where? Victoria's voice was hoarse, rough. My home. You collapsed about 2 blocks from here. Do you remember what happened? Victoria sat up slowly, wincing. Monica helped her, arranging pillows behind her back. I was walking, I felt dizzy. She looked down at herself, still in her expensive coat, now damp with melted snow. You brought me here. Couldn't just leave you on the sidewalk. It's Thanksgiving Eve, ambulances are backed up, and you needed somewhere warm more than you needed paperwork. For a long moment, Victoria just stared at her, then her gaze moved to Lila, who was still standing there with the damp cloth, trying to be helpful, her face scrunched up in that particular expression of childhood concentration. Why does she look so sad? Lila whispered to her mother. Monica had taught her daughter to whisper quietly, but 10-year-olds haven't quite mastered volume control yet. Victoria clearly heard, because something flickered across her face, surprise, maybe, or recognition, or something deeper that Monica couldn't quite name. "Hush now," Monica said gently. "Why don't you heat up some of that soup from last night? Our guest looks like she could use something warm." While Lila bustled off to the kitchen, importantly clattering pots and humming off-key, Monica sat back on her heels. "Do you have someone I can call? Family?" "No." The word came out flat, final, like a door slamming. "Friends?" "No." Monica studied her for a moment. In 14 years of nursing, she'd gotten pretty good at reading people. This woman wasn't just physically unwell, there was something deeper going on, something that had nothing to do with fainting spells. She'd seen that look before, in patients who'd lost everything, who'd reached the end and found nothing there. "Well," Monica said, standing up and brushing off her knees, "guess you're stuck with us for a bit then. At least until you feel steady enough to get home. Lila makes terrible soup, too much salt, never enough vegetables, but it's hot, and that's what matters." "I heard that," Lila called from the kitchen, indignant. Victoria's lips twitched, just barely. It might have been the beginning of a smile, or maybe just a muscle spasm. Hard to tell with someone who looked like they hadn't smiled in years. Victoria woke to the smell of chicken soup and the sound of quiet singing. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. The ceiling above her was cracked plaster, a spider web of lines radiating from the corner where water had probably leaked at some point. Not the smooth crown molding of her bedroom, not the recessed lighting she'd had installed 3 years ago. The air smelled like old wood and vanilla candles and something cooking, real cooking, not the reheated meals her housekeeper left in the refrigerator. And someone was singing, a child's voice, slightly off-key but full of genuine joy, working through what sounded like a Thanksgiving hymn. "Come you thankful people come, raise the song of harvest home." Memory flooded back, the diagnosis, the walk, the fall. The woman with kind eyes and capable hands who'd brought her here, wherever here was. Victoria sat up slowly, her head still feeling tender, and looked around properly. The apartment was small, living room flowing into kitchen, maybe one bedroom beyond the half-open door she could see. Everything was worn but scrupulously clean. The couch she was lying on had seen better days, probably better decades, but it was covered in beautiful quilts, hand-stitched in patterns that spoke of patience and love. Mismatched furniture filled the room, nothing matched, everything probably salvaged from garage sales or hand-me-downs, but arranged with care to create something cozy. The walls were covered in children's artwork, dozens of pieces in crayon and marker and finger paint, creating a riot of color. A small bookshelf overflowed with worn paperbacks and library books. The kitchen table, visible through the doorway, was set with mismatched dishes, and someone had put fresh flowers in a mason jar as a centerpiece. It was nothing like her house, nothing like any place she'd spent time in for 30 years. Her mansion was full of furniture chosen by an interior designer, art selected by a consultant, every surface carefully curated to project success and taste. This place was just lived in, loved in. It was beautiful. Monica appeared in the kitchen doorway, saw she was awake, and smiled. "How are you feeling?" "Better." Victoria's throat was dry. "How long was I asleep?" "About 2 hours, long enough for Lila to finish her homework, make dinner, and start practicing for the school Thanksgiving service." Monica moved to the couch, professional again, checking Victoria's pulse with practiced efficiency. "Your heart rate's better, color's coming back. Still, you should see a doctor soon. Fainting can be serious." Victoria almost laughed. She'd seen a doctor, that was the problem. That's what had led to this whole evening, the diagnosis that had sent her walking into the night, the weakness that had dropped her on a street corner, the kindness of strangers that had brought her here. "I appreciate what you've done," she said instead, starting to stand. "I should go. I've intruded enough. I can call a car. Sit down." The words were gentle but firm, and Victoria, who hadn't taken orders from anyone in decades, who'd fired executives for questioning her decisions, found herself sitting. Monica disappeared into the kitchen, and returned with a bowl of soup and a sleeve of crackers. "Eat first, then you can leave if you want, but I'm not sending you back out into the cold until you've got some food in you. My mama didn't raise me to send people away hungry." The soup was as promised, terrible, Too salty, not enough vegetables, the noodles slightly mushy from being reheated. Victoria ate every drop. It was the best thing she'd tasted in months, not because of the flavor, but because someone had made it for her. Someone had noticed she needed feeding, and had taken the time to warm up leftovers and bring them to her with crackers and a paper napkin. When was the last time someone had simply fed her, not served her at a restaurant, not delivered takeout, but actually cared whether she was hungry? Lila watched from the kitchen doorway, her dark eyes curious. She'd changed into pajamas now, bright pink with unicorns on them, clearly too small, probably last year's that she'd outgrown but still loved. Her hair was in braids, coming loose at the ends. "Are you rich?" she asked suddenly. "Lila." Monica's voice was sharp. "It's okay," Victoria said, surprising herself. "Yes, I'm rich." "Then why were you sleeping on the sidewalk?" "Don't rich people have big beds?" Lila Marie Harris. "I have several beds," Victoria said, and for some reason, the absurdity of it struck her as funny. 7 bedrooms, actually. 8 bathrooms, a guest house, all empty except mine. Lila frowned, working through this with the serious logic of childhood. "That's sad. You should get a dog. Dogs are good for lonely people, or maybe some kids. Kids are better than dogs, because they can talk to you and help you when you're old." "That's enough," Monica said, but she was smiling. "Time for bed, baby. Say goodnight to Miss Langford." Victoria heard herself say. Just Victoria. Lila came over, and without warning, hugged her. It was quick, impulsive, the way children hug, with their whole body, holding nothing back, giving affection freely because they haven't yet learned to hoard it. Victoria froze, her hands hovering uncertainly in the air, not quite sure what to do with them. By the time she thought to hug back, Lila had already released her and skipped off toward the bedroom, calling back, "Good night, Victoria. I hope you feel better." "Sorry about that," Monica said, clearing the soup bowl. "She's friendly with everyone. Hasn't learned to be cautious yet. It's fine." Victoria's voice sounded strange to her own ears, thick with something she couldn't quite name. When was the last time someone had hugged her? When was the last time she'd allowed it, let herself be touched with simple affection, rather than the careful handshakes and air kisses of the business world? She couldn't remember. She stayed another hour, though she couldn't have said why. Monica didn't press her to talk, didn't ask probing questions about why she'd been alone on the street, or why she had no one to call. She just sat in the comfortable old armchair across from the couch and folded laundry, the endless mundane task of single motherhood, while the radiator clanked and hissed in the corner, and the snow continued falling outside the window. It was peaceful. More than peaceful, it was safe. Victoria felt something in her chest loosening, some tight band she hadn't known was there, until it began to release. "You didn't have to help me," she said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. "You don't know me. I could have been anyone. Dangerous, crazy, drunk." Monica looked up from folding a tiny unicorn shirt. "You could have been. But you weren't. You were someone who needed help. That's enough. Most people wouldn't have stopped. Most people aren't nurses who've seen too many bodies wheeled into the morgue because nobody stopped." Monica's voice was matter-of-fact, not looking for praise. "Besides, my mama used to say that angels sometimes come disguised as people who need our help. Maybe helping them is how we earn our wings. I'm not an angel, neither am I. But maybe that's not the point." Finally Victoria stood. "I should call a car. I'll walk you down." At the door, Victoria hesitated. She'd written checks for millions of dollars without a second thought, had given to charities and causes, had her name on hospital wings and research centers. But standing in this shabby apartment, looking at this tired woman who'd helped a stranger without asking for anything in return, she didn't know what to say. Money seemed crass. A business card felt wrong. What do you give to someone who's given you something you didn't know you needed? "Thank you," she managed finally. "For everything, for the soup and the safety and the kindness. Thank you." Monica smiled, reached out, and squeezed her hand. "Happy Thanksgiving, Victoria. I hope you find what you're looking for." Outside, waiting for her Uber in the cold night air, Victoria looked up at the lit window 3 floors above. She could see shadows moving behind the curtain. Monica tucking her daughter in, probably, reading a bedtime story, or saying prayers, or doing whatever it was that good mothers did. She thought of Ethan, of the bedtime stories she'd been too busy to read, the prayers she'd been too rational to say, the moments she'd sacrificed for meetings and deals, and the relentless climb toward more. Something in her chest hurt, and for once, it had nothing to do with cancer. Victoria's mansion felt like a museum when she returned that night. Marcus had left the lights on, he always did, programmed on timers to simulate occupancy, but they only emphasized the emptiness. Rooms full of expensive furniture that no one sat on, arranged in conversation groupings for conversations that never happened. Art on the walls that no one looked at, abstract pieces that an art consultant had assured her were excellent investments and would complement the space. A kitchen that her housekeeper kept immaculate because Victoria never cooked, never even made coffee, just grabbed something from the coffee maker that was programmed to brew at 5:30 every morning. She'd built this, bought every piece of it with money she'd earned, clawed her way up from nothing to create this monument to success. 10,000 square feet of marble floors and crown molding and floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Lake Michigan, and it was hollow. She stood in her bedroom, 700 square feet, larger than Monica's entire apartment, and looked at the king-sized bed with its silk sheets and down comforter and decorative pillows that she removed every night and replaced every morning. She thought about that lumpy couch with the worn quilts, about the way Lila had hugged her without hesitation, about Monica's matter-of-fact kindness. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, she dreamed of falling, of snow, of a child's voice singing off-key about thankfulness and harvest homes. Thanksgiving Day dawned gray and cold. Victoria's housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, had left a prepared meal in the refrigerator, a small turkey breast already roasted and sliced, sides carefully portioned for one and packaged in matching glass containers, a slice of pumpkin pie with a perfect dollop of whipped cream. Everything elegant. Everything perfect. Everything lonely. She sat at her dining room table, the one that seated 12 that she'd bought for dinner parties she never hosted, and ate her perfectly portioned Thanksgiving meal in silence. Through the windows, she could see other houses, other families. The neighbors 2 doors down had cars filling their driveway, children running in the yard despite the cold. She could imagine the scene inside, crowded, noisy, probably chaotic. Food cooling on the counter while people talked over each other, kids underfoot, someone's uncle telling the same stories he told every year. It sounded wonderful. At noon, Victoria found herself in her car, driving south. She told herself she was just going to thank them properly. Bring a nice gift, maybe some money, the way she'd thank any vendor or service provider. That's all this was: settling a debt, closing a transaction. She parked outside the building, a brick walk-up that had probably been elegant once, maybe 80 years ago before the neighborhood changed and the money moved north. Now it was shabby but respectable, the kind of place where working people lived. The front door had a broken lock, the hallway smelled like old cooking and cleaning products, but someone had put up Thanksgiving decorations, paper turkeys, and a Be Thankful banner. Victoria climbed the 3 flights with 2 shopping bags from Whole Foods, the expensive one on Clark Street, where everything was organic and artisanal and cost 3 times what it should. She'd bought things she thought they might need. Fresh vegetables, the kind that came in bunches with the dirt still on them. Good cheese from France. A pre-roasted chicken that cost $40. Fancy crackers and expensive jam and butter from a Vermont dairy. Wine that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week. The kinds of things she picked at during business dinners and barely tasted, things she bought because they signaled success, not because she actually wanted them. She knocked before she could second-guess herself. Lila opened the door, still in her pajamas despite it being afternoon, and her face lit up like Christmas morning. "Mama, the sidewalk lady is back." Monica appeared from the bedroom, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her scrubs, her hair down for once. She looked younger like this, softer, more herself. Her eyes widened when she saw Victoria standing in the hallway with her expensive shopping bags. "Victoria, I wanted to thank you properly," Victoria said, the words coming out more awkwardly than any boardroom presentation she'd ever given. "I brought, well, food. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got things. Too many things probably." For a moment, Monica just looked at her, her expression unreadable, then she smiled, warm and genuine, and stepped back. "Come in." The apartment looked different in daylight, smaller, yes, but also warmer. The sunshine through the windows showed the cracks in the walls but also lit up Lila's drawings, made the old furniture look comfortable rather than worn, highlighted the flowers on the table and the photos on the walls. Pictures of Lila at various ages, of Monica and an older woman who must have been her mother, of moments captured and cherished. "You didn't have to do this," Monica said, unpacking the bags on the kitchen counter. Her eyes widened at the expensive brands, the fancy packaging. "Victoria, this is too much. This cheese costs, oh my God, is this really $40 cheese?" "It's just cheese," Victoria said, though they both knew that wasn't true. "Can I have one of these?" Lila was already exploring the bags, pulling out a container of fancy cookies with chocolate drizzle. "After lunch," Monica said automatically, but she was smiling. Then she turned to Victoria. "Stay for lunch? I mean, I interrupted your holiday yesterday by dragging you in here. The least I can do is share Thanksgiving dinner. It's not fancy, just turkey sandwiches from last night's leftovers and some sweet potato casserole, but you're welcome to join us." "I'd like that," Victoria said, and meant it more than she'd meant anything in a long time. They ate at the small kitchen table, Lila chattering about her school play, about her best friend Jessica, who'd moved away last month, and how she missed her. About the book she was reading about a girl who discovered she had magic powers. Victoria found herself listening, really listening, in a way she hadn't listened to anyone in years. In business, she'd learned to listen strategically, to hear what people wanted so she could figure out how to use it. But this was different. She was listening because she cared, because this little girl's stories mattered, because the way her face lit up when she talked about magic was more valuable than any quarterly earnings report. "What do you do?" Lila asked suddenly, pausing mid-bite of her sandwich. "For work, I mean. Mama's a nurse. She saves people. What do you do?" "I run a pharmaceutical company. We make medicine." Lila's eyes went wide. "So you make the stuff that saves people? The stuff Mama gives them?" "Sometimes." Victoria thought about all the business decisions she'd made, the profit margins she'd protected, the stockholders she'd answered to. "It's more complicated than that." "But you help people feel better." "In theory, yes." "That's cool," Lila said seriously. "Mama says the best thing you can do in life is help people. Even if it's hard, even if you don't get anything back, because that's what makes us human, caring about each other." Victoria looked at Monica, who shrugged. "She pays attention in church." After lunch, Lila pulled out her homework, a math worksheet that had her frowning at the kitchen table, pencil tapping against her teeth. Victoria found herself leaning over looking at the problems. "You're getting stuck because you're trying to do it all at once," she said. "Break it into steps. See this, first multiply these two numbers, then take that answer and subtract this, one step at a time." Lila tried it, her face scrunched in concentration, then it clicked, and she looked up with joy. "I get it, it's like building blocks. You do one piece, then the next piece, then the next piece." "Exactly, you're a good teacher," Monica said softly, from where she was washing dishes. Victoria looked up, startled. "I had a son once who'd disagree with you." The words hung in the air. Monica didn't push, didn't pry, just kept washing dishes with steady, patient movements. But somehow that made it easier to keep talking. "His name is Ethan. He's 28 now. I haven't spoken to him in almost 10 years. "What happened?" Lila asked with the blunt curiosity of children who haven't learned that some questions hurt. "Lila," Monica started. "It's okay," Victoria said. She took a breath. "I tried to make him into something he wasn't, pushed him too hard, wanted him to be successful, to have everything I didn't have growing up, but I didn't understand that success isn't the same for everyone. He wanted to teach, I wanted him to be a doctor, we fought, he left, and I was too proud to call him, too stubborn to admit I was wrong." "You should call him now," Lila said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "I wouldn't know what to say." "Start with 'I'm sorry,'" Monica said gently, drying her hands on a dish towel. "That's usually a good place to begin." Victoria smiled bitterly. "I don't apologize. I never learned how. In my world, apologizing is weakness. It's blood in the water. If you admit you're wrong, people will use it against you. That's a terrible way to live," Lila said matter-of-factly. "Lila," Monica's voice was sharp this time. But Victoria laughed, actually laughed, a real sound that came from somewhere deep in her chest. You're right, it is a terrible way to live. I'm just not sure I know any other way. Then maybe, Monica said, coming to sit at the table with them. It's time to learn. Victoria stayed until evening, longer than she'd planned, longer than made sense. She helped Lila with more homework, talked to Monica about nothing in particular, TV shows they'd both seen, books they'd both read, the frustrations of working in healthcare when insurance companies cared more about profits than patients. Normal things, small things, things that felt larger and more important than any merger she'd ever negotiated. When she finally stood to leave, gathering her coat and purse, Lila hugged her again at the door. This time, Victoria was ready. She hugged back, properly, her arms going around the small shoulders, feeling the warmth and trust of a child who gave affection freely. Come back soon, Lila said. Maybe next time you can tell me about being a boss. That sounds interesting. Maybe I will, Victoria said. Outside, in her car, Victoria sat for a long time before starting the engine. She looked up at that third-floor window, warm with light, and she thought about her empty mansion waiting for her. Then she thought about something Monica had said. Maybe it's time to learn a different way. Maybe it was. Victoria told herself she wouldn't go back. She'd thanked them, they'd shared a meal, the debt was settled. She had a company to run, treatments to consider, a life however hollow to maintain. But 3 days later, she found herself in her car again driving south. This time she brought books, one she'd seen Lila eyeing at a bookstore, young adult novels about adventure and magic and kids who saved the world. Monica protested, but Lila was already tearing through the wrapping, and Victoria felt that warm feeling in her chest again. It became a pattern. Victoria would find excuses to visit, bringing groceries, or books, or sometimes just showing up with coffee for Monica. She'd help Lila with homework, tell her stories about building a business, about traveling the world for conferences and deals, about things the girl had never experienced but dreamed about with the boundless imagination of childhood. And slowly, without quite meaning to, Victoria began to fill a space in their lives. When Monica worked late shifts, the overnight ones that left her exhausted and barely functional, Victoria started picking Lila up from school. She'd bring her back to the mansion, that huge empty house that suddenly felt less empty with a 10-year-old running through it, and they'd do homework at her dining room table, the first time that table had been used in years. She taught Lila to play the piano that sat unused in her music room, showed her how to identify constellations through the telescope. Victoria had bought once for a hobby she'd never pursued, helped her plant seeds in the garden that Victoria had never planted. For the first time in a decade, there was laughter in Victoria's house. There was life, but old habits die hard, and Victoria had spent 50 years learning to control, to direct, to optimize everything around her. It started small. She noticed Lila slouching while doing homework, and corrected her posture. Sit up straight, good posture shows confidence. Then she started scheduling the girls' time. Homework from 4 to 5, reading from 5 to 6, dinner at 6:30 sharp. She banned junk food, the chips and cookies and sugary drinks that Lila loved, and replaced them with organic vegetables and lean proteins. She created vocabulary lists and math drills, practice tests and study schedules. She needs structure, Victoria told Monica when the woman raised an eyebrow at the rigid schedule printed out and hung on Victoria's refrigerator. She's bright, brilliant, actually, but she needs discipline if she's going to reach her potential. If she's going to get into a good college, get scholarships, make something of herself. Monica's expression was carefully neutral. She's 10. I started learning business principles at 8. My mother would sit me down every night and drill me on math, on reading, on anything that might help me get ahead. There's no such thing as too early to prepare for success, or too early to lose your childhood, Monica said quietly. But Victoria didn't hear the warning in her voice. She was too focused on helping, on improving, on taking this bright, wonderful child and molding her into something successful. She'd failed with Ethan, let him go soft, let him chase dreams instead of building security. She wouldn't make that mistake again. Lila tried to keep up. She was a good kid, eager to please, desperate for Victoria's approval. When Victoria praised her for getting all her math problems correct, Lila glowed. When Victoria frowned at a messy essay, Lila rewrote it until her hand cramped. But slowly, subtly, something changed. Lila's smiles became less frequent. Her laughter faded. She stopped volunteering stories about school, stopped asking questions about Victoria's business, stopped being the bright, curious child who'd asked why Victoria looked so sad that first night. Now Lila looked sad, tense, careful. She stopped drawing her chaotic, colorful pictures and started making careful, precise sketches that she thought Victoria would approve of. She stopped singing off-key while she did homework and worked in tense silence. She stopped running to hug Victoria when she arrived, and instead stood politely, waiting to be told what to do. But Victoria didn't see it. Or maybe she saw it and told herself it was growth, maturity, improvement. This was what success looked like: discipline over chaos, control over emotion, achievement over joy. It was the only way she knew how to love. Monica arrived at Victoria's house earlier than expected one Wednesday evening, her shift ending ahead of schedule because the hospital was unexpectedly slow. She let herself in with the key Victoria had insisted she have, for emergencies, Victoria had said, though they both knew it was really about trust, about becoming something like family. The house was quiet, too quiet. Monica called out as she entered the massive foyer with its marble floors and crystal chandelier. No answer. She followed the sound of piano music, the same scale, played over and over, mechanical and joyless. She found them in the music room, and the scene made her heart sink. Lila sat at the piano bench, tears streaming down her face, playing the same C major scale for what must have been the 50th time. Her shoulders were hunched, her hands shaking slightly. Victoria stood behind her, arms crossed, face stern and unyielding. Again, Victoria was saying, her voice cold in that CEO way that probably terrified boardrooms. You're rushing the transition between C and D, your finger position is sloppy. We'll keep practicing until you get it right, Victoria. Monica's voice cut through the room like a knife, sharp enough to make them both turn. Can I speak with you? In the other room. Now, Victoria's jaw tightened. She wasn't used to being challenged, wasn't used to being interrupted, but she nodded curtly. Take a break, Lila. 5 minutes. Then we'll continue. In the hallway, Monica fought to keep her voice level, but fury was burning in her chest. What are you doing to my daughter? I'm teaching her discipline, teaching her excellence. She has potential, Monica. Real potential. But potential means nothing without hard work, without breaking her spirit. Monica took a step closer, her voice rising. She's a child, Victoria. Children need joy, they need play, they need room to make mistakes and be messy and figure out who they are. They don't need boot camp. Victoria's eyes flashed, her own voice rising to match. Joy doesn't pay bills. Joy doesn't get you into good colleges, or land scholarships or open doors. Joy doesn't lift you out of poverty and keep you from ending up like. She stopped herself. Like who? Like me. Monica's voice was soft now, dangerous. Is that what you were going to say? I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You look at me and you see failure. A single mother working double shifts, living in a shabby apartment, barely making ends meet. You see everything you fought so hard not to be. That's not. But Victoria couldn't finish the sentence because it was true, at least partly true. I'm not ashamed of my life, Monica said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. I'm not ashamed that I don't have a mansion or a corner office. I have a daughter who knows she's loved. I have a community that cares about me. I have a life with meaning beyond a bank balance. What do you have, Victoria? The words hit like physical blows. Victoria felt her carefully constructed walls cracking, felt something breaking inside her chest. I'm trying to help her, she said, and hated how weak her voice sounded, how desperate. I'm trying to give her what I didn't have. I'm trying to make sure she never has to suffer the way I did. What you didn't have, Monica said gently, the anger draining from her voice, probably wasn't more structure, Victoria. What you didn't have, was someone telling you it was okay to be human. Someone letting you fail without it being the end of the world. Someone loving you for who you were, not who you could become. Victoria opened her mouth to argue, to defend herself, but the words wouldn't come. Because Monica was right, she could see it suddenly, clearly, like a curtain being pulled back. You don't understand, Victoria said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I grew up with nothing, nothing. My mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the heat on in winter. I wore clothes from donation bins, shoes with cardboard in them to cover the holes. I studied by candlelight when they shut off our electricity. I learned to read from newspapers I found in the trash. She turned away, couldn't look at Monica while she said this. The only thing that saved me was discipline, working harder than everyone else, never stopping, never resting, never letting myself be weak. My mother sat me down when I was 9 years old and told me there was only one way out: be better than everyone else, be smarter, work harder, never show weakness because the world will eat weak people alive. Her voice cracked. She said love was a luxury we couldn't afford, that kindness was weakness, that only the strong survived, and if I wanted to survive, I had to be made of steel. Monica was quiet behind her, listening. So I believed her, Victoria continued. I made myself into exactly what she said I needed to be. I studied until my eyes hurt, worked until my body broke, climbed and clawed and fought my way up, and she was right. I survived. I succeeded beyond anything we'd imagined, but somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be anything else. I forgot how to be soft, how to be kind, how to love without it being conditional on achievement. She finally turned around, met Monica's eyes. I did the same thing to Ethan, pushed him, molded him, tried to make him strong, the only way I knew how. I thought I was loving him. I thought I was preparing him for a hard world, but really I was just passing on my mother's poison, spreading the same damage that was done to me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And now I'm doing it again to Lila, because it's all I know. It's the only way I know how to love someone, by trying to make them strong enough to survive without me. Monica moved closer, put a hand on Victoria's arm. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. But Lila doesn't need to survive without you, Victoria. She needs you to help her flourish with you. There's a difference. I don't know how to do that. Then maybe it's time to learn a different way. Maybe it's time to stop trying to save her from suffering, and start teaching her how to be happy. From the music room, they heard a sound, not the scales Victoria had assigned, but a simple melody, something Lila must have learned on her own or made up. It was imperfect, halting in places where she missed notes, speeding up and slowing down, without any sense of proper rhythm. And it was beautiful, beautiful because it was hers, because it came from joy instead of discipline, because it was the sound of a child being allowed to play. Victoria listened, really listened, and something inside her broke completely. All the walls she'd spent a lifetime building, all the control she'd fought so hard to maintain, all the fear she'd used as armor, it cracked and crumbled and fell away, and she began to cry. Not the quiet, controlled tears she'd learned to master, the kind you could hide behind sunglasses or blame on allergies. These were ugly, gasping sobs, the kind that shook her whole body, that came from somewhere deep and damaged and desperate. Monica pulled her into a hug, and Victoria let herself be held, maybe for the first time in 50 years, really held without having to be strong or in control or put together. I don't want to be alone anymore, Victoria whispered against Monica's shoulder. I don't want to die alone with nothing but money and success, and an empty house. I want what you have. I want family, I want love, I want to matter to someone beyond what I can give them. You already do, Monica said softly. You already matter to us, but you have to let us love you, Victoria. You have to stop trying to earn it, or control it, or make yourself worthy of it. You just have to accept it. I don't know how. Then we'll teach you, the same way we're trying to teach Lila, with patience and kindness, and room to make mistakes. They stood like that for a long time, Victoria crying, and Monica holding her, while in the other room, Lila played her messy, beautiful, imperfect music. Finally Victoria pulled back, wiping her eyes. I need to apologize to her. To Lila, I need to tell her. Yes, Monica said, you do. But Victoria, when you do it, don't apologize like a CEO. Apologize like a human, like someone who made a mistake and wants to do better. Victoria nodded, took a shaky breath, and walked back into the music room. Lila had stopped playing, and was sitting on the piano bench, her small hands folded in her lap,
her face uncertain and scared, scared of disappointing Victoria, scared of not being good enough. Victoria knelt down beside the bench, brought herself to Lila's level. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Lila looked at her with those big serious eyes. "I was wrong," Victoria continued, the words feeling strange but necessary. "I was trying to make you into something you don't need to be. I forgot that you're not a project to improve or a problem to fix. You're perfect exactly as you are, messy drawings and all."
"You don't like my drawings?" Lila's voice was small. "I love your drawings. I love that they're colorful and wild and full of imagination. I was scared. Scared that if you weren't perfect and disciplined and controlled, the world would hurt you the way it hurt me. But I was wrong. The world didn't hurt me because I wasn't perfect. The world hurt me because no one taught me it was okay to be imperfect." Lila was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she asked, "Are you going to make me do scales anymore?" "Only if you want to. And if you never want to touch this piano again, that's okay too. I'll still love you. I'll still want to spend time with you. Not because you're achieving things or being perfect, but because you're you and being you is enough." Lila thought about this, then slid off the piano bench and wrapped her arms around Victoria's neck. "I like the piano. Just not all the time. And I like when you teach me things. Just not when you get scary." Victoria hugged her back, careful and gentle. "Deal, I'll try not to be scary. And if I forget, you can tell me. Okay? You can say, 'Victoria, you're being scary,' and I'll stop. Okay?" Lila pulled back, smiled her real smile for the first time in weeks. "Can we have ice cream now? Mama brought some." "Yes," Victoria said, standing up, taking the small hand that reached for hers. "We can have ice cream." And as they walked to the kitchen together, Victoria and Monica and Lila, something shifted. The house felt different. Not quite full yet, but no longer quite so empty. It felt like the beginning of something real. Victoria didn't visit for 3 days after that night. She stayed in her mansion, but this time the emptiness felt different, not comfortable and familiar but wrong, like wearing someone else's clothes. She sat in her office, stared at her phone, thought about calling Monica but wasn't sure what to say. She'd broken something, violated the trust of the only people who'd cared about her in years. Why would they want her back? On the 4th day she showed up at Monica's door with flowers. Not expensive hothouse orchids or elaborate arrangements from fancy florists, but simple daisies from the corner store, already starting to wilt slightly. Her hands shook as she knocked. Monica opened the door. For a moment they just looked at each other. Monica tired from a night shift, Victoria exhausted from days of soul-searching. "I'm sorry," Victoria said. The words came easier this time, less strange. "I'm sorry for what I did to Lila, for trying to control her, for trying to make her into something she doesn't need to be, for not understanding that strength can look like kindness and that discipline without love is just cruelty." Monica studied her face, seeing something there that must have satisfied her because she stepped back. "Come in." Lila was curled up on the couch reading one of the books Victoria had brought weeks ago. She looked up, uncertain, when Victoria entered. Victoria sat down beside her, careful to leave space, not crowding or demanding. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry for forgetting that you're not a project, you're a person, a wonderful, creative, smart person who doesn't need fixing because nothing about you is broken." Lila was quiet for a moment, then leaned against Victoria's side. "Are you going to be nice now?" "I'm going to try. And if I mess up when I mess up, because I probably will, I want you to tell me. Can you do that?" "Okay." They sat like that for a while. Victoria's arm around the girl, Monica watching from the kitchen doorway with bright eyes. "I don't know how to do this," Victoria admitted. "I don't know how to care about people without trying to control them. I don't know how to love without strings attached." "Then we'll figure it out together," Monica said, coming to sit on Lila's other side, the 3 of them on that lumpy couch. "That's what families do. They figure things out together." "Family," Victoria repeated, testing the word. It felt strange and wonderful. "If you want to be," Monica said. "No pressure, no obligations, just if you want people in your life who care about you for who you are, not what you've achieved, then yes, we're family." Victoria nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The changes came slowly. Victoria still visited, still helped with homework, still shared meals with Monica and Lila, but now she listened more than she directed. She asked Lila what she wanted to do, rather than planning every minute. She let Monica make decisions about her own daughter without offering suggestions that were really just commands in disguise. It was harder than any business deal she'd ever negotiated, harder than building her company from nothing. Every instinct told her to take charge, to fix things, to optimize and improve and control. But she was learning to let go, to trust, to be present without being domineering. She started volunteering at the community center in Monica's neighborhood, serving meals at the food bank, helping with after-school programs where kids came for homework help and a safe place to be. The work was humbling. She who'd commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals was now ladling soup and teaching basic math to struggling students. But it was also fulfilling in a way her corner office had never been. These people needed her, not for her money or connections, but for her time and presence, and she needed them, needed to feel useful in a way that mattered beyond quarterly earnings. Dr. Chen had started her on chemotherapy. The treatments were brutal. They left her weak and nauseous, her hair starting to thin, her body feeling like it belonged to someone else. On the bad days when she could barely get out of bed, Monica would come by, using her nurse's expertise to help manage the symptoms. And Lila would curl up beside her, reading aloud from whatever book she was currently obsessed with, her young voice steady and comforting. "You're my family," Victoria told them one evening, the words surprising even herself. "I want you to know that. Whatever happens, however long I have, you're my family." Monica smiled. "Yeah, we are." The months passed, fall turned to winter, then to spring. The chemotherapy was working, not curing. Dr. Chen was honest about that, but buying time, shrinking the tumor, pushing back the inevitable. Victoria made it through winter, through the hard months when the cold seemed to seep into her bones and the treatments felt like they might kill her faster than the cancer. But she kept going, kept showing up, kept learning how to be part of something bigger than herself. Ethan was still out there, still in Portland, still unreachable. Victoria thought about him often. Drafted 100 emails she never sent, picked up the phone a dozen times and never dialed. The fear was still there, fear that he wouldn't answer, or worse, that he would answer and tell her it was too late, that some wounds couldn't be healed. Monica noticed, of course. She noticed everything. "You should call him," she said one evening, while they were cooking dinner together. Actually cooking, not reheating prepared meals, but making something from scratch that would probably turn out mediocre, but would be made with love. "I don't know what to say. Start with 'I'm sorry,' then see where it goes from there. What if he hangs up? What if he doesn't want to hear it? Then at least you tried, at least he'll know you wanted to reach out." But Victoria couldn't quite make herself do it. Not yet. As Thanksgiving approached again, a year since that night on the street corner, Monica pulled Victoria aside one evening. "I need to talk to you about something," she said, nervous in a way Victoria had never seen. Her hands twisted together, and she wouldn't quite meet Victoria's eyes. "About the Thanksgiving dinner we're planning. I'm looking forward to it," Victoria said honestly. She'd been learning to cook badly but with enthusiasm, and had promised to bring her infamous lumpy mashed potatoes that Lila had declared better than perfect ones because they have character. "I did something," Monica said quickly, the words rushing out. "I hope you won't be angry, but Lila and we've been doing some research, looking online, making phone calls. It took months, but we found him. Ethan, your son." Victoria's world stopped. The kitchen went silent around her, or maybe that was just the blood rushing in her ears. "You found him? He's living in Portland, working as a teacher at a middle school, and I reached out to him, sent him an email, told him about you, about us, about everything that's happened this year." Victoria's voice shook. She didn't know if she was angry or grateful or terrified. "I know it wasn't my place," Monica continued quickly. "I know I should have asked first, but you were never going to do it yourself, and I thought you deserved a chance. Both of you deserved a chance." "What did he say?" Monica's face softened. "He wants to see you. He's coming for Thanksgiving. Victoria, your son is coming home." Victoria sat down hard on a kitchen chair, her legs suddenly unable to hold her weight. Her heart was pounding so hard it hurt, and for a moment she thought she might be having a heart attack, might be dying right here in Monica's kitchen. "What did you tell him?" she whispered. "The truth, that you're sick, that you've changed, that you've been trying to learn how to be different, how to love differently, that you miss him every single day. What if he hates me? What if he comes here and realizes I'm still the same person who drove him away? Are you? Monica asked gently. Are you the same person? Victoria thought about it. Thought about the woman who'd collapsed on that street corner a year ago, cold, alone, dying inside long before the cancer started. Thought about who she'd been, ruthless, controlled, using discipline as armor and achievement as proof of worth. No, she said finally. No, I'm not. Then trust that. Trust that he'll see it too. The days before Thanksgiving crawled by. Victoria cleaned her house, then cleaned it again. She practiced what she'd say, wrote speeches in her head, deleted them, started over. She bought new clothes, then worried they were too formal. She made the mashed potatoes 3 times, trying to get them perfect, before Lila reminded her that imperfect was better. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and bright, the sky that particular brilliant blue that only comes in late November. Victoria stood in Monica's small apartment. She'd offered to host at her mansion, but Monica had gently insisted on her own space, her own territory, wearing an apron that said "Kiss the Cook" in faded letters. Her hands were covered in flour from the pie crust she was attempting. Lila was helping, which mostly meant eating chocolate chips and telling stories about her school friend who tried to bring a frog to class. Everything felt surreal, too bright and too loud and too real. When the knock came at the door, Victoria froze. Monica squeezed her shoulder, whispered, "You've got this," and went to answer. And there he was, Ethan, her son, 28 now, with his father's dark hair and her blue eyes. He looked older than she remembered. Of course he did. A decade had passed. He was thinner, wearing a worn jacket and jeans, carrying a bottle of wine, and a nervousness that matched her own. "Hi, Mom." The room was very quiet. Lila had stopped chattering for once. Monica had stepped back, giving them space. Victoria took off the apron with trembling hands, flour dusting her dark slacks. She wanted to run to him, wanted to stay frozen where she was, wanted to say 1,000 things and couldn't find words for any of them. "Hi," she managed finally. They stood there, 6 feet and a decade between them, neither quite sure how to cross the distance. Then Ethan saw the countertop, saw the disaster of Victoria's baking attempt, the flour everywhere, the pie crust that looked more like abstract art than pastry, and he laughed. A real laugh, startled and genuine and surprised. "You're cooking?" The disbelief in his voice was almost comical. "Attempting to cook, mostly failing spectacularly." "That's," he shook his head, smile lingering, "that's really unexpected. I've done a lot of unexpected things this year." Victoria's voice was soft. "I've changed, or I'm trying to, anyway." Ethan looked at her, really looked, in a way he hadn't since he was a boy, and Victoria let him see her. Not the CEO, not the success story, not the woman who had it all together. Just a mother who'd made terrible mistakes and was desperately trying to fix them. A woman who'd loved too harshly, and was learning softness. A human being, flawed and scared and hoping for grace. "I'm sorry," she said, the words coming easier now after months of practice. "I'm sorry for everything, for trying to make you into something you didn't want to be, for not listening when you told me who you were, for not understanding that love doesn't mean control, that caring doesn't mean pushing, that being a parent means supporting your child's dreams, not replacing them with your own." Ethan's eyes were bright, shining with unshed tears. "I'm sorry for being too proud to call," Victoria continued, her own voice breaking. "For letting years go by without reaching out, for thinking I needed to be right instead of being your mother. For everything I said that last night, all those cruel, horrible things that I can never take back." She took a shaky breath. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not even sure I deserve forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I was wrong, about everything, about what matters, about what success looks like, about how to love someone." She gestured around the small apartment, at Monica and Lila watching quietly. "These people taught me that. They found me when I was lost, literally lost, collapsed on a street corner, and they showed me what family actually means. Not perfection or achievement or conditional love, but just showing up, being present, caring about each other through the messy, imperfect reality of life." "I'm sorry too," Ethan said softly, "for disappearing,
for not trying harder to maintain contact, even when things were hard, for not understanding that you were doing your best with the tools you had. I wasn't doing my best, Victoria said. I was doing what was easiest. Control is easier than vulnerability. Discipline is easier than understanding. Pushing people away is easier than risking getting hurt. They stood there, 6 feet apart, until finally Ethan moved. He crossed the distance, and he hugged her. Victoria held her son for the first time in a decade and cried. Not the quiet, controlled tears she'd learned to master, but ugly, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. 10 years of loneliness and regret poured out of her. 10 years of missing him and hating herself and not knowing how to fix what she'd broken. Ethan held her tight and cried too, and Monica herded Lila into the bedroom to give them privacy. I missed you, Victoria whispered against his shoulder. Every single day, every moment of every day, I missed you too, Mom. When they finally pulled apart, both of them red-eyed and laughing awkwardly, wiping tears with their sleeves, they heard the smoke alarm going off. Lila came running out of the bedroom, the turkey's on fire. The next hour was chaos. Monica pulling the smoking turkey out of the oven, windows thrown open despite the cold, all of them waving dish towels at the smoke alarm until it finally stopped screaming. The turkey was indeed dead, blackened and inedible, and the kitchen smelled like disaster. Well, Monica said, staring at the ruined bird, I guess we're ordering Chinese food, and somehow that made it perfect. They sat around Monica's small table, eating Chinese takeout from cartons, telling stories and laughing. Lila demanded to hear about Ethan's teaching, and he told them about his students. Kids who struggled and succeeded, who drove him crazy and broke his heart. Victoria watched him talk, saw the passion in his face, the way he lit up when he described helping a student finally understand something they'd been struggling with. This was what he was meant to do. Not medicine, not building empires, but teaching, helping, making small differences that added up to big ones. She'd been so wrong about what mattered. What made you come? Victoria asked later, when Lila had fallen asleep on the couch and Monica was making coffee. When Monica reached out, you could have ignored it. Could have decided I didn't deserve a second chance. Ethan was quiet for a moment, stirring sugar into his coffee. I read what she wrote about you, about the cancer, about how you'd changed, about how you'd been trying to learn to be different. And I thought about all the years I'd spent angry, all the time I'd wasted holding on to hurt. He looked up, met her eyes, and I realized that if you were trying to change, the least I could do was meet you halfway, because you're my mom, and I never stopped loving you, even when I was angry, even when I couldn't talk to you. I just didn't know how to be around you without losing myself. You don't have to worry about that anymore, Victoria said. I'm done trying to make people into what I think they should be. I'm just grateful you're here. They talked until late, catching up on a decade of missing pieces. Ethan told her about his life in Portland, his small apartment, his students, his girlfriend, who taught art at the same school. Victoria told him about Langford Pharmaceuticals, but also about the community center, about learning to cook, about discovering that success measured in relationships was more valuable than success measured in dollars. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, old wounds that still stung, years of distance that couldn't be bridged in one evening, but it was a start. It was real, and it was enough. The months that followed Thanksgiving were the best of Victoria's life. The chemotherapy was working better than anyone had expected. The tumor was shrinking, the cancer markers dropping. Dr. Chen cautiously admitted that she might have years, not months. Victoria might actually have time to build the relationships she'd neglected, time to become the person she wished she'd been all along. She'd sold her mansion, that huge empty monument to loneliness, and moved into a smaller townhouse near Monica's neighborhood. It had 3 bedrooms instead of 7, a cozy kitchen instead of a showpiece, comfortable furniture instead of designer pieces. It was a home, not a statement. With Monica's help and connections in the community, she'd started a program providing free medications to uninsured women in underserved neighborhoods. She called it the Second Chance Initiative, and it was funded by money she'd once have spent on art she never looked at, or cars she never drove. Ethan had come back to Chicago, taken a teaching position at a school in South Side. He had dinner with Victoria twice a week, and sometimes he'd bring his girlfriend Sarah, who was warm and funny, and made Victoria's son happy, in a way she'd never thought to hope for. They were building something, slowly, carefully, a family constructed from broken pieces, but strong because they'd learned from the breaks. On this October evening, almost 2 years since that night on the street corner, Victoria sat in Monica's kitchen, in what had become her chair, watching Lila do homework, and Monica chop vegetables for dinner. It was ordinary, mundane, perfect. "Tell me again about when you were little," Lila said, not looking up from her math problems. She'd heard the stories before, she loved them, asked for them regularly, like other kids asked for fairy tales. But tonight, Victoria told different stories. Not about the grinding poverty, or the relentless discipline, but about the moments of grace that had kept her going. The neighbor who'd shared her dinner, when they had none. The teacher who'd stayed late to help her study. The librarian who'd quietly waived late fees so Victoria could keep reading. "I spent so long thinking it was discipline that saved me," Victoria said. "The hard work, the never giving up, and those things mattered, but I was wrong about what really saved me." "What was it?" Lila asked, even though she'd heard this part before too. People who cared when they didn't have to, who helped when they got nothing in return. People like your mother, who found a stranger on a sidewalk, and brought her home instead of leaving her in the snow. Monica looked up from her cooking, smiled that smile that never got old. "I'm glad Mama found you," Lila said seriously. "You were too sad before. Now you're happy." "Yes," Victoria said, and it was true in a way that still surprised her sometimes. "Now I'm happy." The cancer was still there, it would always be there. Dr. Chen had explained. It was in remission now, but it could come back. Probably would come back, eventually. Victoria might have 5 years, or 10, or with luck maybe 15. But she'd learned that life wasn't measured in days or years, it was measured in moments. In Lila's laughter when Victoria made a joke. In Ethan's phone calls, just to chat, no agenda. In Monica's friendship, steady and true and unconditional. In the feeling of being useful, of being needed, of being loved not for what she could do or provide, but simply for who she was. She'd spent 50 years running from poverty, from powerlessness, from the vulnerability she'd learned to fear. And in running, she'd lost everything that mattered. She'd become successful and miserable, rich and empty, powerful and alone. But she'd found her way back, found it in the most unlikely place, on a random street corner in Southside, in the kindness of a tired nurse and a curious child who'd asked the most important question Victoria had ever heard. Why does she look so sad? She wasn't sad anymore. "You know what today is?" Monica asked, setting down her knife. Victoria glanced at the calendar. October 22nd. 2 years exactly since I found you on that corner. "Best night of my life," Victoria said, and she meant it completely. "Really?" Lila looked skeptical, the way she always did when Victoria said this. "The night you passed out in the snow was the best night of your life." "The night I found my way home," Victoria corrected gently. That evening, after dinner and homework, and a movie that Ethan had brought over, after Sarah had told stories about her art students and Lila had finally gone to bed, Victoria stood at the window of Monica's apartment, looking out at the snow-covered street. She could see the corner where she'd fallen, could trace the path from there to here. Not just the physical distance, but the emotional journey. From the woman she'd been to the woman she'd become. That Victoria, the one from 2 years ago, had been powerful and successful and alone. She'd built walls around everything, used achievement as armor, mistaken control for strength. This Victoria was still learning, still stumbling, still scared sometimes, but she wasn't alone. She had Monica and Lila, had Ethan and Sarah, had the community at the center and the families she helped through the medication program. She had people who cared about her, people she cared about, people who made life worth living. Behind her, Lila was already asleep on the couch, curled up with a book still clutched in her hand. Monica was laughing at something Ethan said, that full warm laugh that lit up any room. And Victoria turned away from the window, from the past, from the woman she used to be. She turned toward her family, toward love, toward life. "Come on," Ethan called, waving her over to the table where they were setting up a board game. "Mom, you're on my team. Fair warning, I'm terrible at this game." "That's okay," Victoria said, settling down beside him. feeling Monica's hand squeeze her shoulder as she passed. "We'll figure it out together." And they did. Outside, the snow fell gently on Chicago, covering the street corner where Victoria Langford had collapsed 2 years ago, lost and alone, and dying not from cancer, but from a life lived without love, without connection, without meaning beyond achievement. But inside, in a small warm apartment filled with laughter and light, and the chaotic beauty of people who loved each other imperfectly, she was alive. Really truly alive. That was the cure. Not medicine, though the medicine helped. Not treatment, though the treatment was working. Not the desperate fight against mortality, though she was fighting. The cure was this: people who loved you, people you loved back, moments that mattered more than money. Days spent not running from death, but walking toward life, hand in hand with those who taught you it was never too late to change, to grow, to become who you were always meant to be. Victoria had spent 50 years building an empire, accumulating wealth, achieving success by every traditional measure. She'd fought and clawed, and sacrificed everything to escape poverty, to prove she was worth something, to matter in a world that had dismissed her as worthless. In the end, none of that had saved her. What saved her was much simpler, much harder, much more profound. It was Thanksgiving, not the holiday, but the practice. The daily choice to be grateful for what she had rather than obsessed with what she might lose. It was family, not the one she'd been born into, but the one she'd chosen and been chosen by. The one built from kindness and second chances and forgiveness. It was finally coming home.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.